DeMond Williams betray Washington? This is a real sketchy situation.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. That gentleman right there, that's Jake Butt with the Big Ten Network. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Rugiit. If you've been thinking about taking the time, the next step, now's the time. Head to Rugiit.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiit ready, feel present, feel confident, feel ready. And just quick reminder for all you everydayers out there, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, please make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post new show. Plus, for the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the show out a lot. Now, Jake, we got a loaded conversation coming at all our everydayers out there on this Wednesday. We have to talk about Jedd Fisch and his role in the situation. I've seen a lot of theories. Can't wait to dive into some of those as to the part he played in this conversation. We're going to have a really interesting, loaded discussion on how the NCAA can fix this problem. But one of the many, many texts I got last night when this all went down was from you. It just said WTF. And I replied, yeah, man, that's my feeling too.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? You know, I'm sitting there, and obviously those that have followed me know I love Jedd Fisch. I think he's an outstanding coach. And, you know, there was rumors maybe he was going to join Michigan. Okay, he's back at Washington. You guys just signed an outstanding recruiting class. I believe it was the best in the history of the program.
That's correct.
And then you signed DeMond. Like, it sounds like that's the final other domino. It's crazy to even have to say that, but you signed your quarterback back. And I'm sitting here thinking, all right, you know, Washington was close this year. A lot of the pieces are falling where this looks like they're going to take that next step next year. And then you see the news, and it's just like I had a pit in my stomach. And it's just, I've had a pit in my stomach throughout all this. The calendar's a mess. Everything is a mess. But this is like a very high level. And I'll just say this. It's like every year we're moving. This time of year is always crazy. It seems like every year we're moving closer to like a full break in reality. Like, it's just going to snap. And like, this is a move that's pretty close to seeing a snap, because we had the Xavier Lucas scenario. So for the viewers, this was a guy that was at Wisconsin, signed an NIL program deal with Wisconsin, a great player. Wisconsin really needed him and had him in their plans for the future. Miami comes in, the Hurricanes, after the fact, it says, rip up that deal. We got you. We'll pay you more, and you come play to us. And that was a lawsuit that came before last season. It's still ongoing, but he played last season for the Hurricanes. So like, there's going to be a lawsuit, but this whole thing is a freaking mess.
I couldn't agree with you more, because it's one of those things where as my phone blew up, really, is just the best way to say it, I was kind of like, wait, hold on. He did just resign. And there are reports coming out from some national people, from other people here in Seattle, that the deal that DeMond Williams signed was going to pay him as much as $5 million. And this rumor with LSU and Miami is the rumored top suitors here might try to up that by as much as $2 million more is just absolutely wild.
I thought it was $4 million for Washington, but you're saying $5 million. He was already getting $5 million.
Yeah, one of Seattle's top radio hosts was saying it was as much as $5 million.
Okay.
And
okay.
Probably
with incentives then too, right? Maybe it's $4 million with incentives. Got it. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I would certainly bet that was the case, since full transparency on both of our angles. It is very hard to get a lot of these numbers and like to see what a lot of the inner workings of NIL as a whole are, because it's just so confusing. But it's one of those things where, because there are two different ways to look at this, right? Where on one hand, it's, hey, this kid's going to be getting what, $6-7 million to go play quarterback for a year somewhere. Like, yeah, who wouldn't take a deal like that? And then on the other side, it's the somewhat awkward part of this is the way that this all transpired with Washington was, it seems like it was done just completely behind the backs of everyone on the coaching side and the administration and everyone just involved with this deal. And I think that you certainly can't fault somebody for taking that much money, but at the same point in time, it's wow, he really just turned his back on his team, his coaching staff, somebody who's been loyal to him since middle school, really, when you talk about his relationship with Jedd Fisch. And then on top of that as well, announcing it during the celebration of life for a women's soccer player who passed away after her battle with cancer, Mia Hammett.
Yeah, I didn't know that part either. You know, that's something I got up to speed. And look, I mean, all of that makes it look really bad. You know, but the timing of like I peel back the layers a little bit here. And, you know, Demond, if that's true, Demond didn't decide the timing of when LSU was going to come in and make this offer. You know, so like that's some people say, man, he's really trying to stick it to Washington. That's not Demond. Like that's not even his character to begin with anyways. It's the timing is unfortunate. But I blame LSU, their coach.
I agree.
And the NCAA more than anything. We are here because of the NCAA. And I see your question down there. Jedd Fisch isn't to blame for no. Jedd did his job. Like these are tough negotiations, and people didn't get into college coaching expecting to have to deal with this. Jedd did his job. That's a lot of money, and Demond is worth it. He is an outstanding quarterback. Like that is when you're irreplaceable, you get big checks. So Jedd did his job. Washington did their job. Signed the contract. You think, sweet, great, we got our quarterback for next year. He's not even on campus, right? I don't think Jedd was aware that LSU was making this push probably until it was too late. So, you know, for me, my blame, and Demond's going to have to live with some guilt here because that's human nature. Demond knows that Jedd's been in his corner, and Jedd's been his biggest advocate and supporter and has done everything to support him and grow his game and gave him an opportunity. And Jedd bet his career effectively on Demond. So Demond's going to have to live with that. And that he probably won't acknowledge it, but it's real. But on the flip side, I say, how old is he? 20, 21, 22?
19, 20, somewhere. Yeah.
$2 million. And I know you're getting $4 or $5 million. That's a lot of money, but $2 million additional dollars. That's what I made in my entire NFL career, to be honest with you. That is the entirety of my NFL contract that he's getting for 1 year to do the exact same thing he was going to do at Washington. So it's not the fault of the player. He'll have to deal with his own guilt. We are directly here because of piss poor leadership, leadership that like they were cashing 7-figure checks saying we're here to protect the student athlete. No, you're not. And you never have been. And it's also greasy business practices by those at LSU. It just flat out is. And until actions follow incentives, we have incentivized this exact thing. The NCAA has incentivized this because they don't enforce any rules, and they can't enforce any rules. So that's the unfortunate part here.
No, I couldn't agree with you more there. And that's one of the things where you mentioned LSU and you mentioned that side of things. Like it feels like that's commonplace with just what Lane Kiffin has been for a very long time now. And it feels very clear with what's going on in Baton Rouge at this point in time that they're just trying to save face after what happened with Brian Kelly, how that whole situation is still unfolding there. How can we mask this? What can we do? Oh, let's go out and let's buy Lane Kiffin. Let's give him the biggest contract that a coach has ever seen. And all right, let's go out and get one of the most talented quarterbacks and let's give him the most. Like, I feel like it's fair to speculate at this point in time that whatever Demond is going to be making is the most a college player has ever seen for a single season.
I think so. No, I think so. I think so. Because here's the other thing too, is I got to imagine lawyers will be involved. This is going to go to court. Yeah. It's going to be messy and it's going to be an ongoing court case, and lawyers are not cheap. So I got to imagine LSU either, misled Demond and said, hey, like didn't mention that, hey, this is going to go to court. Or if they did, they might've downplayed it, but regardless, now LSU is going to be responsible for those lawyers as well. And add that on top of what they're paying him. So it's, it's just unfortunate, man. It really is unfortunate. I want Ole Miss to win against Miami. I want a Big Ten team to win the national championship, but I would find a lot of joy in Ole Miss winning a national title, because life is kind of ironic and poetic in a sense. Imagine if Ole Miss wins a national title without LSU or without Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin left you to go to LSU to win a national title. That would be absolutely hilarious to me.
That would be one of the chef's kisses of this situation. I will say, in complete fairness, most of the viewers of this channel would only want one of the two Big Ten teams remaining to win. But I will, especially with Miami's role to play in this, it does feel like those are the rooting interests of this particular audience. But it all just kind of leads us to one big, almost unanswerable question, but we're going to try. It's, how can the NCAA fix this? And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel has given all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. You can ride with the favorite. When you think a team controls the matchup, you could take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming, or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get it on into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Jake, this isn't a simple discussion, but we need to try our best to have it. And obviously you have a very unique viewpoint on this matter from your playing career at Michigan and your NFL draft status and everything like that. Is there any one simple answer to this question?
Well, I think let's go back and think about how we got here, because I lived through kind of a pivotal time. I mean, we all remember, let's go back to like the Reggie Bush instance and how big of a joke that was in hindsight. And this, I will say, when you think about like exponents in math, that kind of grasp, there's been exponential growth of college football as a business and as a product. So in that sense, it happens slowly and then it happens all at once. Like suddenly college football is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, in programs and football teams are worth billions of dollars. So it's naive like, how could you not pay the players for generating revenue? But at a time that was not a thought. You said, hey, the scholarship is enough. But when I got to college, we weren't even allowed meals. Okay. Yeah. Like when they passed the law in college where they went from, remember when they said we can give you a bagel, but we can't give you cream cheese because that makes it a meal. Think about how, if you're in a position of leadership, how dumb that is. Like, just think about how, like, that is how that we have to go there to understand the leadership that took us here. The people that were making millions of dollars, by the way, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in leadership in deciding the future of where we currently are, once said we can give them bagels, but not cream cheese because that makes it a meal. That's the people that we're dealing with. I lived through this in college where, I almost didn't get to play my senior year at Michigan. I could have left for the NFL after my junior year. I decided to come back. I wanted to become a captain. I wanted to chase records. I wanted to win a championship. I had all these goals. And going into the summer of my senior year, I get called into the Michigan compliance office. And they did it. This is how sneaky they are. They did it under some false guidance too. They said, hey, we want to talk to you about the insurance on your body. I insured my body, which helped me because I got injured in the bowl game. I was able to collect on it. They're like, hey, we want to talk to you. Come down to the office. We want to talk to you about your insurance. So I go down there. Now, I preface this by saying I had been getting haircuts from a close friend of mine, and there was no deal. I didn't get free haircuts. There was no deal. But on occasion, my friend would not charge me for a haircut. Also, I used to cut my own hair in the dorms. I would buzz cut myself in the dorms. So I'm like, look, there was no issue. At one point, he had mentioned that his nephew was in the military, stationed overseas, and was a huge Michigan fan. So without him knowing, I signed a picture and had it sent to his nephew, and he was literally in the verge of tears. He was so grateful. it wasn't, hey, send this autograph and you get free haircuts. But it's how it unfolded. We were friends.
Sure.
I helped him. I considered him. He took care of me. And that's just a relationship in general. Michigan brings me into the office and says, as soon as they close the door, everything you say will be written down and recorded. This is, we are going to explore, impermissible benefits, basically, is what it was. And I'm sitting, and this is, again, the people we're dealing with. I said, guys, this is a haircut. Like, mind you, I paid for like 90% of the haircuts. This is a haircut. And they're like, okay, but where do you draw the line? You're getting free haircuts. Who's to say your friend wouldn't just give you a car from the dealership? And I'm like, what kind of friends do you guys have? I know a lot of people that cut each
I want one of
other's
those
hair.
friends.
Yeah. I don't know any friend that just hands out cars or houses or tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking about a freaking haircut here. Mind you, this entire time, people were selling my jerseys in the stands. I would always autograph for kids. Bunch of those autographs were really for the parents so they could sell. People were selling Bud Army shirts. I didn't make a dime of this. I don't know how much the university made. I don't know how you could place a value. I know that the university won their deal in terms of marketing off my back. The university even sold my jerseys and game-worn gear and travel bag without my knowledge. I was at a signing in the NFL and some guy drops a bag down and has all my game-worn gear that I didn't even get a chance to accept. So look at, this is the power structure, okay? And the whole time the NCAA is sitting here saying, we're here to protect the student athletes. They're looking the other way. We're here. We can't do this. We're here to protect the student athletes. We're here to, and it's so obvious as college football is exploding in revenue and viewership and as a product. It's so obvious. NCAA, you better get ahead of this. Because if you don't, it's going to turn into the Wild West. When leadership fails to act, it turns into the Wild West. If you don't do maintenance on your house, eventually the foundation will crumble. We are here because of the inaction of the leadership of the past. So now you want to talk about the solution, and I'm done talking because you presented some things, earlier off air. So I wanted to kick it back to you, but I just wanted to say that story so people can understand, like, whoa, this whole thing has always been a mess, but it's the lack of action by the NCAA that has led us to this exact scenario. So don't blame the kids is all I'm going to say. Don't blame the kids. Don't blame the kids. Blame the leaders.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, because that is the most obvious answer to how we've gotten to a point like this. And there is no simple answer. Something I've talked about a lot through the transfer portal cycle is Washington needs to go out and find some help on the defensive line. And then we look at what a program like Texas Tech is doing. It's how much is it going to take to get David Bailey? Oh, $3 million as ESPN reported. All right, yeah, let's do that. Look at what they're doing this cycle. It's the exact same thing to go get several players, including Bryce Butler from here at Washington. It's what are you going to do to change that? And if they're not even going to do something as simple as enforcing a contract, like we're already devolving to the point of the Wild West as it has been coined for a while now. But one of the things that as you said, I posed you off air and I thought would be a really fun conversation point to have is, especially with a situation like this, where again, let's just say, let's split the difference between what these rumors are and say that DeMond Williams is going to make $6.5 billion at whatever his landing point might be at LSU or Miami. The revenue share at a lot of these schools is somewhere between $15 and $20 million. That's allotted for, all sports. And 85-90% of that is going to wind up going to football, which is its own issue and its own problem. Yeah. But on top of that, we're seeing, again, Texas Tech, Ohio State is a big one. There are so many schools you can go to, Texas A&M being another one, they're just going to shell out as much NIL money as possible to go out and acquire talent. Brendan Sorsby is getting $5 million from Texas Tech. Has been reported. All of these things are absolutely wild. And I was going through and doing some math the other day with one of our Locked On Huskies insiders, and that would be 33% of a salary cap in revenue share. Dak Prescott is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for the 2026 season, and he's going to be making 20% of the Dallas Cowboys salary cap. All of that is absolutely insane. And it's one of these things where you need to find a way to put a hard cap on all of this is my 2 cents on the matter. Because if it's, hey, you got $15 million and then, all right, every school, no matter how much you fundraise, you are allotted 15 more whatever you you think a fair number might be, 15 more in NIL, and your roster as a whole with all these third-party deals that need to be approved through a committee that doesn't seem to matter at all at this point. Also, that is the absolute hard cap. You can't go over $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's one possible answer here. I don't know.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. And if I want to bring up a point too, because there's issues beyond. So you talk, if the NCAA is not even going to enforce a contract, then what are we talking about? Because, DeMond signed a contract. So there's not just that issue, but if you say college is about learning, what are you teaching these kids about the values of life as well? Because this is quick money. Now, you're basically conditioning them at a prime moment in their life that you get to do whatever you want to whoever you want. Your word means nothing. Your autograph means nothing. Your contracts mean nothing. That's also what you're saying here. That's problematic and stands against the values the NCAA tells us they stand for and want to implement into the student athletes. So there's more hypocrisy. Now to the hard cap. I think the only way we get there is if there needs to be a collectively bargained agreement. That's how it works in the NFL. And the players would have to be, that would mean, DeMond, for example, he benefits from the Wild West. He's getting an extra $2 million here. Sorsby benefits from the Wild West. He's getting, I don't know what Cincinnati was paying him, but he's getting a ton of cash at Texas Tech. So the players will have to, at some level, especially the top players, they'd have to give up some of that high-end value for stability, guidelines. But this is going to, I do not believe the NCAA. I believe the NCAA is actively doing nothing in order to turn this into chaos so it can crumble and so they can step in and fix it. So with that being said, I think the only solution is the players are going to have to meet. The coaches would have to meet. The university athletic departments would have to meet. They need to come up with a jointly agreed upon proposal of what works. Players, what do you value? What is most important to you? This would be my solution, okay? Have each team elect a council of 5 to 10 players. And I would make sure that each class has at least one representative. So the freshman class, sophomore, junior, every class needs a representative, but you need maybe 5 seniors, 5 upperclassmen from each team. And then have each conference elect from that council to have their own conference council. The coaches already do this. Coaches have a council, and then the coaches elect a 3 to 5 representative from each conference. Then you have college football as a whole now with representatives from teams, with players and coaches, conference and players and coaches, and now you have athletic directors as well as conference commissioners. Everybody get together and say, what do you value most? Say, what do you value most? 3 to 5 to 7. What is the most important thing for you as a player? And it'd be very easy to see on a Venn diagram, where is the crossover? Because there's enough money to go around. It's not a problem of money, but we need someone to take ownership so we can put structure to go in alignment with the money. The way the NFL does it, it makes, Jerry Jones can't just sign Dak to a $60 million deal and then have another side business pay him $10 million. Like that would go against the CBA, but that is collectively bargained in an agreement to prevent that from happening. So, that has to be the case. It absolutely has to be the case, and I think there's other things that would have to come up of, we cannot have unlimited transfers. Nope. We cannot have unlimited transfers. The calendar needs to change. No way should we be playing a playoff game at this point where 2 of Oregon's coordinators are also working the transfer portal for their next location. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
But the only way you get here is we need a collectively bargained agreement. What are your thoughts, though?
Oh, I love that. Let's hit a quick break real fast, because on the other side of that, I think, no, you're totally fine. This is a wonderful conversation, but Jedd Fisch also has some really strong thoughts on that. And I know we have to loop him into this discussion as well. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at Rugiet. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. The science behind Rugiet Ready stands out. 3 clinically proven ingredients in one formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. You connect with a board-certified doctor online, and everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now it's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockdowncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockdowncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. So, Jake, I'm really glad you mentioned a change of the calendar, because this is something that Jedd Fisch has been a really strong proponent of. And as you were saying all that, that was where my mind was going with all this, because one transfer, we need to find a way to go back to that. And I feel like there should be exceptions for,
one transfer in your first 4 years, but grad transfer as well.
But then if a coach leaves or something, I feel like that's one of those situations as well. That would certainly, it makes it a little dicey, but there are ways around this. There are ways to fix the solution. And Jedd Fisch has been a big proponent of this, where his big thing is hold spring practice a little bit later, in May, in June, where you already have your whole roster signed in terms of the incoming class, everybody who's coming back, and then you can hold this transfer portal later. So it's more supplementary, just like NFL free agency. And because that's been his biggest thing this whole time. And it also, because the biggest problem, and I think one of the things that is a little overlooked in this from certain points, is the academic calendar. It all needs to line up with the academic calendar as well. And the unfortunate thing is not every school is on the same calendar, where Washington is a quarter school. A lot of schools are on semesters, and there needs to be a way for this to line up. And I do kind of like the idea of a little bit later transfer portal, as long as it's one, because you bring up a great point with all these coaches that are looking for new jobs and how that's impacted high school recruiting. You know that full well with Michigan and how that situation has played out too. I think that is one of the biggest solutions in all of this, is finding it, like there needs to be one transfer portal, and it is cutting down on this whole unlimited transfers thing, because that is a category as well, to bring it back to Damon Williams, that he would fall into, because this would, I feel like this would still count as the one transfer, but obviously, with everything else on top of that, who knows how that would play out, because his coach left from the school that he signed with and he followed him to Washington. Like, that's one of those things where when that happened, it was okay. It doesn't feel like anybody's going to fault anyone for that, especially with Jedd Fisch, who that was really late in the process, because Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington 3 days after playing in the national championship game. Like, it's all chaos.
Yeah. And what ends up happening, like, it forces like panicked decisions, because it happens, it's birthed out of chaos. So it forces reactionary chaos, which leads to bad decisions, which leads to further problems. And again, like, this is clarity, structure, guidelines. That's all the point of leadership. And that would be another thing too, is, there is a value on lifetime relationships. I still talk to Jedd to this day because of our time at Michigan. Is that going to be the case at LSU with Damon, or is it just like a handshake deal? Like, we're kind of just, using each other for a year. Like, we're also losing the value that how can we place a value on that for the players? The current incentive structure tells you it's not valuable. And that part is problematic to me. What about college football fans too? Like, at some point, how exhausted is everybody? How exhausted are you, man? You're covering the
Yeah,
team like you
I
guys.
slept like 5 hours, man. I was thinking about this all night. I had to grab an energy drink just to get up this morning. Like
I know.
it's ridiculous. And I think that another exhausting part of this is when we look at it from the perspective of Jedd Fisch, because he was linked to the Florida job. He was rumored to be in the mix for the UCLA job. He's rumored to be in the mix for the Michigan job as well. So I've seen a lot of people theorizing, well, hey, does that mean that Jedd is going to leave at some point soon? Does this mean that maybe he's going to take one of these open NFL jobs? I feel like there's a lot there, and there's been a lot of finger pointing at him. And through the course of the year, there certainly were things that I think could have been improved upon, and I talked about that a lot here on the show. But this is one of those scenarios where there is no reason, there is no way that he is at fault for anything that transpired with this situation, because you mentioned it earlier. This just sounds like one of those greasy backdoor situations where he was taken aback by how all this went down. And the way that Washington has responded to all of this with, we're going to sue, there are going to be lawsuits, there's going to be this. I feel that he was just as blindsided by this as we were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And you know, here's the thing too, is, you know, why would Jedd be linked to those schools, for example? You know, like Michigan, you know, when it comes to Bryce Underwood, no one's going to outbid Michigan, you know, for Bryce Underwood. There's like a handful of schools that if you're a coach and a competitor, like you would want to go to, because there's a handful of schools where like resources are not an issue. And that is like a luxury in today's landscape, again, because of, you know, the current incentive structure. But here's the other piece of this that I would encourage fans to consider. Is you have to then therefore play the game. You know, Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I don't know how much your viewers follow that. Marcus Freeman has been linked to every opening. Maybe Michigan, maybe Penn State, maybe the New York Giants, maybe the Raiders, maybe the Ravens. Now that John Harbaugh got fired, and I would, the way I also view this, like from another perspective, is you have to keep pressure on your athletic department in your university that if you guys aren't doing what I need to do, I am leaving. You know, by having names tied to other schools, you can then get the resources you need beyond just your salary, but for your staff and for your players. Signetti in Indiana is a great example. All of a sudden, that school has all the resources in the world because they said, we don't want to lose this guy. Not just for him, though, but you look at their supports. I think that's a top 5, top 3 funded staff in all of college football. Same with the roster and the transfer portal. You know, Signetti created pressure in a different way by having success on the field, and his name organically gets popped up everywhere because he's such a good coach. But, you know, with a guy like Jedd, clearly it's more subjective. I'm on X arguing with people about how great of a coach he is. Not everybody feels that it's a clean-cut deal. So if you're Jedd, you have to, or you're Jedd's agent, you have to try to find ways to apply pressure. It's like war tactics, because this is war. It's a resource battle. It's war tactics to ensure that the university athletic department and boosters are giving you the resources needed to succeed. You know, it's part of the game here.
I couldn't agree with you more, but I think there are two sides to this coin, because on one side of the coin, yes, you need to make sure that everyone is funded as much as possible. And there's so much about, like, I look at Ryan Walters and his name being linked to the Tennessee job, and what's going to happen with that scenario, where obviously they go out and they hire Jim Knowles. But I just think more so in, hey, he was so successful at Washington his first season. That guy deserves an extension. He deserves a raise. And I'm sure that, you know, when you're arguing for stuff like Jedd getting those resources, I feel like they are there. And they are available at Washington, because, and this is what the other side of the coin is, this DeMond Williams scenario showed that, because they were paying him, according to Pete Thamel, top of the market value for a quarterback. And that was very clear when Brendan Sorsby went to Texas Tech. And, you know, again, there are a lot of reports coming out of Seattle that DeMond's deal was going to be worth as much as $5 million. So he was getting paid top of the market value. And I don't think that that's where, you know, a resource problem exists at Washington, because nobody knew that LSU was going to, or Miami was going to come out and say, hey, this is what we're going to offer you, especially after a contract was signed, because the deal was done. The resources were there and they were able to retain those guys. And we look around the roster, you're able to retain one of the best freshman linebackers in the country, and Zadris Rennie-Saleh. You bring back a freshman All-American along the offensive line. We know those guys aren't cheap. In John Mills, you look around the rest of Washington's roster, and it's very clear that the player retention and the resources were there to make that happen. And I think that
Walters
that is
get
where,
an extension?
Not yet. I do believe that that's something that Washington was going to try to work on at some point in time, because there are several members
He's
of the
earned
staff.
it.
He has earned it. I believe several members of the staff fall into that department as well. But that's where it's a real odd issue, because again, the market that was set by a quarterback was what Damon Williams was already being paid, and who knew that this was going to be the situation. And I do just want to add that I don't believe that Jedd is going to be in the mix for any of these NFL jobs at this point in time. And that's one of those scenarios where I don't think that is something that I just have seen some Husky fans worrying about. But just as this continues to play out, all of it shows, in my opinion, just the cracks or not even cracks, they're fault lines at this point in the NCAA.
Jedd's not going to the NFL. I can calm the nerves of the Husky fans. Jedd's not going to the NFL. But yeah, I had some buddies, like I got buddies throughout college football, and some of them have been let go at different places, and I'll just check in with them, how you doing? And many of them, when I ask or when they reveal their future plans, are like, yeah, I'm trying to go to the NFL, man. Like, and again, Jedd's not going, but assistant coaches and position coaches are saying, yeah, I'm trying to go to the NFL because they just don't want to deal with this anymore. It's just, it's heartless too, because the other piece is there's a difference between college coaching and NFL. And like NFL is more corporate, it's a business. When people got into college coaching, one of the major reasons is because you have a chance to mentor young men. Like you get to know these kids when they're 16 years or 17 years old or 15 years old in high school. Their parents entrust you to guide and mold them at a pivotal time, 18 to 22 years old. You invest your time, money, emotional resources into these kids, and then they just leave. And, like that's gosh, man, like I get, like, some of the best people I have in my life are my coaches in college. And that's gone the second you decide to say, and you get a check. And, when you're talking millions of dollars, that's hard to turn down. I would be hypocritical if I said I wouldn't consider it myself. But for other guys, even if it's like 10, 20, 30, 50, even 100,000, I think the relationships are not being properly valued by some of these players. But again, until we put structure in place, there's zero. Tell me if I'm wrong. What incentives are there for players to stay, Roman? Like what incentives are there for players to stay?
Unless that team is, the only example I can give on the other side of that coin is the 2023 Washington team, because all of those guys did come back. Like if Rome Odunze and Michael Penix and Troy Fautanu and Roger Rosengarten and all these other big time stars on that team did want to hit the transfer portal or did want to go to the NFL, they all would have been highly compensated. That's very obvious. And they all came back with the collective goal of winning a national championship. And I think that's one of those things that it's going to shine through in certain scenarios where that is the only thing I can think of, because other than that, you're absolutely right. It's just shown that it's not even just a loyalty discussion. It's just capitalism at a certain point, which brings in a whole other discussion. How many teams
do you think get because that team was clear. That 23 Washington team, and Michigan was the same way that year. On any given year, how many teams do you think, like locker rooms,
2?
believe?
3?
Yeah. 5 maybe at the most.
Like it's
maybe 10 if you're getting into like the subjective gray area.
Like look at Ole Miss this year. Like it's very clear that they felt that way, and that's one of the big messaging points as this college football playoff run continues. It's crazy to sit here and think about just how much the game has changed. And I've seen so much frustration from people, so much saying this is my last straw. I don't know if I can keep watching college football with something like this. And I think that is where the message really needs to get through to the NCAA is you talk about seeing your jersey in the stands. all of a sudden, all of these players, like there are going to be players who are going to be loyal to a program through and through, where there are so many examples that I could give from a Washington perspective that did and never considered the transfer portal. There are guys on this roster that have openly said things like that time and again, but because of scenarios like this, even those guys are going to get lost in the shuffle, which is really sad.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And, here to your point, like here's another difference between, the NFL and college. Like college is moving towards NFL. Like if the NFL had zero guidelines and was the Wild West. But the difference is, the NFL is a product. A lot of people just watch the NFL. Sure, they probably or maybe have a favorite team, but people just watch the NFL because of it being a product. I find fantasy football to be fascinating because it gets you invested into storylines around the league as a whole. It's just they have a true product, but college is still regional. Like Husky fans don't care to watch a Clemson Florida State game for the most part. There's probably a few. Say Clemson Florida State was a top 10 matchup, maybe, but the majority Michigan fans aren't watching that. Like college football is still regional, and man, we're flirting with fire. This is dangerous because you're exhausting fans. Fans are flat out exhausted. They on a given year, they're going to say, why do I continue to invest in this? It just leads to heartache and heartbreak. And then what? And I just, something needs to change, man. Something needs to change.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that feels like a great place to wrap this one up. Jake, it is always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. To all you everydayers out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you like what we have to offer here on Locked On Huskies, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure to click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.